welcome to the Firebase tutorial for DJ183 final project. I hope you're excited to work with Firebase. It's a really cool tool that hopefully you can use not only in this project but also beyond. So to get started, go ahead and open up your favorite web browser. Then you are going to navigate to firebase.google.com. And it's going to bring you to this page here. So we can go ahead and watch the video if you would like to. It's not a bad video, but in this tutorial we're just going to go ahead and click Get Started. Normally at this point it's going to prompt you to log in. Make sure to log in with your Umish email, but I'm already logged in, so it's not going to prompt me to do that. And then once you have logged in, go ahead and click Add Project. So here it's going to start to prompt you to pick a name for your project. You can name it anything you would like, but I would suggest something DJ183 related. So I'm just going to call it DJ183. You can see here that this project ID was generated for us. This is a unique ID that will uniquely identify your database. And this is something that Google just generates for us. You'll also see this section down here, which will talk about locations, and it says US Central. Don't worry about those. That will be automatically defined for you. And then you should have an accept box down here to accept the terms and conditions. I've already done that, so it's not prompting me to do it again, but make sure you do that. Up here you can choose to click this box or not. This is just sharing information with Google Analytics, and it gives you some extra features, so you can see everything that it does here. We don't really need it for this project, but you can use it if you would like to. So go ahead and click Continue, and then here we have a bunch of extra features that you can choose to have or not. We don't need any of them, so just go ahead and click Create Project. And at this point you will get an email notification saying that you've created a project and that you've logged into Firebase and whatnot. They'll have some tutorials on there. Feel free to look through those, but this demo should cover everything. Okay, great. So our project's ready. So let's go ahead and just click Continue, and it'll bring us to this page here. So this is what you'll see when you log on for the first time as well. So you can see a bunch of different things that Google Firebase does. Like I said, it's a pretty powerful app. It's pretty cool. So you can use it to help you authenticate and manage users. You can do a bunch of analytics and performance stuff. It will help you scale without having to control all your own servers and databases and stuff. So it's a pretty cool tool, but we're going to be using it just for its database. So if you go ahead and click on Develop and then click on Database, it'll bring us to the database section of Firebase. So I actually encourage you to watch this video here. It's pretty cool. So if you want to just pause me and watch that video, go ahead. But you don't have to. I'm actually going to make this screen a little bigger so you guys can see if you're watching this on the spec. Great, so yeah, it's a cool video. It just talks about databases with normal web and mobile apps that people they use this in their full-time apps and websites and stuff. Okay, anyway, so back to DJ183. So next step is go ahead and click Create Database. It gives you these two options, either start in locked mode or start in test mode. We're going to go ahead and start in locked mode, and I'll talk about what that means in just a second. So go ahead and click Enable, and it will take a little bit to set up, and then it's going to bring us to our database page. And so all this stuff, you're only going to have to do once to set it up. So only one person in your group is going to have to do all this stuff that I'm going through right now. And later I'm going to talk about how to actually access and do things with your database through Python, and that all of your teammates will not need to know how to do just to actually use the database. But this setup only needs to happen once per team. Okay, so we're going to be brought to this page. First thing you're going to do is switch to a real-time database. So Cloud Firestore could work, and it has, as you can see here, more powerful queries and automatic scaling, but we're doing this at a pretty small scale and we're not going to need those powerful queries. So just go ahead and go to real-time database, and it's where it's a little bit simpler. So it brings us to this page, and we can see that that's our project ID here, so we have this database, and there's nothing in it. But it's all fully set up at this point, and you can use your database now. So if you have already watched this video once and you're just watching it again, you're at this point, you can go ahead and stop and just start coding with the stuff that I'll talk about later in this video. So cool. So now we have our database all set up. So I'm just going to show you how to manually add things to this database through this browser. Although when you're doing the reach, you're going to be doing it programmatically in Python. But just to introduce you to databases a little bit. So here we have our overarching database, and we can add things to it by saying plus. And you can see that it has name and value here. So these are exactly like key value pairs in Python dictionaries. So you should have used Python dictionary in the core, so hopefully you're like at least a little bit familiar with what that means of key value pairs. So we can add as many key value pairs as we want here. So if I want to, for example, add today's date, it is the 16th for me right here, so I can add that. So now this is our database, right? And it has this key value pair, date, and the actual date. I can add another one, maybe it would call it time, and it is 7:59. So you can add that too. So now we have a date and time inside of our database here. The cool thing about this is we can also have like nested levels. So I can add a further dictionary within this dictionary, which you can also do in Python, by the way. So if I wanted to do that, I push that X, so let's go back to that. So I push that X, or that plus there, to add an item, and I'm going to push this again to make it to a dictionary. So now this top level here is only going to ask me for a name instead of a value, since all the values will be at the second level. So let's say I want to make a students dictionary. So students are in here, and we can have their keys be their names. So I'm just going to, you have to enter in a value to create the dictionary to start. So I'm just going to enter my name, and let's give me a 93. So great. So now we have that information that we just added. So if you click this minus sign here, it's going to collapse that. So this is everything that's at the first level of the dictionary. So we have students, which is a dictionary in itself. We have date and time, which are just key value pairs. So you can see that Amy here is kind of on this second level. So that's what we call it. This is the first level, this line here, and this would be the second level, okay? So we have Amy is inside of students, so we have a little bit of nesting here. So you can actually add as much nesting as you want. So I could add another dictionary in here, and dictionaries within that, and so on. So we're just going to keep it simple and have 2 levels, but you can organize your database for your project or in the future however you would like to do it. Totally up to you. Okay, so now we have this data, so let's add maybe a couple more students here. So we can add Cortana, and we'll give her 100%, and we can add Vineet, and we'll give him an 80%. Okay, great. So now we have 3 students, a date, and the time all in our database. So we have a fair amount of data here. And so at this point, you might be wondering, how are we going to access this data through our core code that we've already written in our Python files? So that is what I will show you next. But before we can do that, we need to adjust the rules. So you can see this rules tab up here, and I'll show you what this looks like. So we can see that there are rules, and it's .read and .write. And these are both set to false. So what this means is right now, nobody can read or write to our database. So these are common database terms. If you don't understand what that means, I'll explain them. So read means looking at what is already in our database. So we're just going to be reading it. We're not changing any values. We're just looking at what's there. And then writing to it would be changing or adding things. So that's the difference between read and write. And right now they're both set to false, meaning that nobody on the outside can read or write to our database. So this is normally good because we don't really want anyone to be able to touch what's in our database, right? We want to keep it secure, and we want to make sure that anyone who is reading or writing to our database, we know exactly who they are. But for the purposes of this project, we're just going to keep it simple and say that anyone who has the link to our database can read or write to it. Again, this is like not very safe because now anyone who has the link can mess with whatever's in our database. You can imagine that in a real world project how bad this might be. For example, if Facebook had a Google Firebase database and they set their permissions to be true, then I could just go on and change and look at everyone's information. So obviously not good, but for the purposes of this project, it's fine. So we're just going to go ahead and click publish. You get this little notification up here that your rules are published. And once you do that, then we can move to doing all this in Python. So we're going to learn how to access and read all this data, and we're also going to learn how to edit it and like put new stuff in it. Okay, great. So the first thing you need to do is pull up your terminal. Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to make that big so you guys can see it. Great, so very first thing you need to do is actually install Firebase onto your computer. So this will allow us to use Firebase functions. So how we do this is pip install and then Firebase. I think it's Python-Firebase actually. Sorry. So I already have it installed, so it says it doesn't say like installed, but you should have a message that says successfully installed. It's not going to look exactly like this, but hopefully you have that installed and there are no errors. If you have errors, just come into office hours or post on Piazza. Okay, great. So we have installed Firebase at this point. Now we will use Firebase functions to access things in our database and edit our database. So instead of doing this in a Python file, I'm going to do this in interactive Python. So what interactive Python is basically just running Python line by line. So if you don't understand this, it's okay. I'm going to talk about how to do it in files later, but it's really just the same code, but just we're doing line by line instead of in a full file. So to start this, just say Python and enter. So you can see that I'm in Python 2.7.15. That's what you want to be in because that's what you need. That's the type of Python version you need to run the project. You should have already handled this all in the setup for the core. So if you're confused, don't worry about it. Just type Python and enter and you can follow along with me, or you can just watch. Okay, so the first thing you need to do to accessing your database is essentially get something that points at your database. So we're just going to create a variable here called dbCursor, and it's called the cursor because it points at the database. You can call it whatever you want. But this is the part that needs to be the same, is Firebase. Oh, whoops. I actually forgot to do one thing. So before you're allowed to use any Firebase functions, we have to import it. So just like for Flask, we have to import Flask before we can use any Flask functions. So what we'll do is from Firebase, import Firebase. And if that pip install was successful earlier, then this should have no errors. If it wasn't successful, then it will give you some errors. Okay, great. So now we are able to use Firebase functions. So now I'm going to say dbCursor equals Firebase dot, and then we're going to say Firebase application, and those are both capital F and capital A. And here's where we put a reference to our database. So you can get the reference to your database by going back to your browser and making sure you're on the data tab, and there should be this link up here above all the data. So just click on that and go ahead and copy it and go back to your terminal. And you can paste it right in there. So make sure it's within quotes, double or single is fine. And then push comma and none as the second parameter. Okay, press enter. So now we have done this weird function, and what it does is it takes this URL and gets a reference to our database and puts in dbCursor. So now we can use dbCursor to look inside of our database. So if we want to see our database from the top level, so that would be looking just at all the information, including everything that's inside students, we are going to do this. So if I want to say dbCursor dot get, so this will get us information, and this parameter is what information we want. So if I just put the slash, that means the very top level, and then again our second parameter will be none. Great. So since we're in interactive Python running things line by line, it automatically prints this out. This is returning this value. Okay, so it's automatically printing out the return value. So this is what's returned, and it's a giant Python dictionary. Cool. So we have our first entry has the key students, and its value is another dictionary. Then we have our date, which its value is the string of the date, and time, which is the string of the time. So great, we see everything that was in our internet browser that we added, and including all the second level stuff, which is the students dictionary. And you can see that it is formatted just like a Python dictionary, so we can do with it just as we would with a Python dictionary. So let's say I want to save this value, so let's save it into this variable called top level. So I'm going to go ahead and run it again. Okay, so now we have this variable top level, and you can see that it is the same exact thing as we had before. I'm going to put a few enters in here just to clear some space. Great, so we have this top level variable, and let's say I want to access specifically the time. So since it's just a normal Python dictionary, I can just treat it as such. I think it's actually a lowercase t. And there we have it, is the string that is 759. Now you might notice all these U's. You can also see the U's in the full top level. Don't worry about those. It's just indicating that this is a string. You don't need to worry about that. So if I print top level time, oops, forgot to end it, then it's just going to print without the U. So you don't need to worry about the U being there. Everything's just going to act like normal. Okay, awesome. So we have figured out how to get our whole top level dictionary and also use it as a dictionary in Python. So we could also look at the top level and then look at the students dictionary specifically. Oops, students is what I wanted. So there we have the students dictionary, and if I wanted to just look at Amy, I could do this. And this is just adding a second key. So this part here is adding, or this is getting the students dictionary, and then this part is here is accessing what is at the key of Amy. So you can press enter there, and it shows us 93. So awesome. If you just want to get the top level of your dictionary, you can just treat it like a Python dictionary and kind of be done with Firebase at that point. But you could also do more with Firebase and do all the stuff that we just did within the Firebase function itself. So, like we said before, this get with that single slash will get us the very top level. But say I just wanted to get students, I could do it like that, and it would just return me the students dictionary. So just like this did up here, this command. So these are doing the same exact thing. And I could also do the same thing where I access just Amy by adding Amy to the end of that, and it returns 93. Great. So we can do everything either in the Python dictionary form, or we can use it in the get function. However you wish to do it is fine. It depends on how you organize your database, which ones will be more useful to you, I suppose. Okay, great. So now we have figured out how to get and read all the information in our database from Python. So now let's say that we want to edit and put new information in. So we're going to do that with the put function. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this again, and this is just me putting in a bunch of enter signs. Great, so now I can say db cursor dot put, and the put function will write to our database. So let's say I want to add a key value pair to my top level. So what I'll do is I say, okay, top level, so it's just a single slash, and the next thing will be your key, and the third thing will be your value. So test, and then I'll say test val. Oh, and I forgot to put a quotes around my values, so it was looking for a variable. So just make sure to put quotes around your values if you want them to be strings. So you can see that this returned test val here, but this is, it's just saying that it successfully put in this value into the database. So we can go ahead and see that this test value pair is right there in our database, so is added successfully. We can also check it by using the get function. And seeing that our test value thing is there. So great, so this is how you put in a key value pair. So you can also put in a key value pair into the student dictionary. So like say I want to add another student. So instead of putting the top level here, we're going to put a second level thing. So we want to put it in students, so that's what we'll do. And then again, the first value is a key. And the second value is the value to correspond with that key. So again, we can check by doing this and getting the student's dictionary. And you can see that Ellie was put in. You can also see it from here that Ellie was put in. Awesome. You can do the same thing to edit. So if I wanted to edit, let's say I wanted to edit my own score, I can do that by saying my key, and let's give me a higher score. So now we can see here that Amy was just changed to be 96. So this is important to know that these keys have to be unique. So that's why this is kind of like the same function. We're just adding a new Amy at 96, but you can't have two keys that are the same, so it just edits it. So make sure that these are unique keys. So that's something that you're gonna have to deal with in your reach, is making sure that all the names or whatever you store in there have unique keys. Okay, great. So we have learned how to look inside of our database at the top level, at the second, at nested levels. Also, we've learned how to use our return values from get as Python dictionaries. We've also learned how to put new values and edit things that are already in there. One more thing I wanted to teach you was how to add a new dictionary, like to the second level. So in that case, we want to add it to the first level, and we would say the slash to say the first level, and then you can say like new dictionary here, and you have to add in a value, so we can just call it test and test. So this will add a new dictionary to the first level, and test will be inside of it. So now we can see here that new dict was added, and inside of it we have test. Okay, great. So now we've learned all the things that you need to know to do the reach. So the last thing is just running all this code in a file instead of this Python interactive environment. So we obviously don't want to be running things line by line every time. So we're going to put it all in a file and run it all together. So I'll show you exactly how to do that. You can say exit parentheses to get out of this. So you'll be adding this to your currently existing core files, or you can make like a new page if you want to. However you want to set it up, that's fine. But it will be like intertwined within your website. But I'm just going to make this sample file just to simplify things. So I'm going to make a Python file and open it in my favorite text editor, which is Python. So this is already what's in here. So it's everything that I've already showed you. So the first thing you need to do is import Firebase. So that would be that first line there. And then you're going to want to do this Firebase application, copy your URL over, and save that pointer into some sort of variable. And then you can use all the get functions. You can treat everything like lists or dictionaries or whatever, however you have it set up, right here. And so if I did, if I want to see Ellie's grade, for example, then I can do that. So I can say print and db.get, and remember that Ellie is in the students level. So I'm going to type students, and then I'm going to type Ellie, and second parameter is none. So go ahead and save that file. And in order to run this, I'm going to go back to my terminal. I'm just going to increase the size of this just so everyone can see it. So these are the crucial 2 lines, and then after you do that, you can use any of the functions we talked about. But to run this, go back to your terminal and say python test.py. Cool. Awesome. So running this file got us 95, which is what we expected, right? Because we got Ellie's grade, which we can see from up here that it is actually 95. So this is how we're going to run all the stuff we talked about, but in file form instead of here on the terminal. So when you're doing this in your project, you're not going to run it with the python test.py. You just are going to add to some Python files that are connected to your website, and then of course just run that that run Mac or run Windows thing that we have given you and that you've been doing since the core. So great. This is the end of the tutorial, sadly, but hopefully you've learned a lot, and you've learned what to do and how to use Firebase. I'm really excited to see what you guys do with this, and I'm really excited to see all your reaches. So good luck, and of course if you have any questions at all, please post it on Piazza or come to office hours and talk to us in person. But good luck!